Hi, I'm Mofi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and you are in the wrong place if you're here to whine about me being unbiased and unbalanced, because as I say at the beginning of all of my videos, I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. It's not just the feminist part that people aren't listening to in what I say, because not only are people mad at me for not somehow being some completely unbiased journalist, they're also mad at me because they didn't listen when I said over and over again in the last video that I had in fact already read Justin Baldoni's complaint before I made my video. I can do nothing about any of that, but I can continue talking to those of you who are actually engaging, both with the situation we are watching unfold and with the videos I am making, and not just the first thing that pops into their head when they see my thumbnail and disagree with my opinion. And that's what I want to do. I want to engage with those of you. I said in my last video that we were about to embark on a trip to like 20 teens YouTube, and that is still very much true, but I realized as I'm working on this Lacey Green deep dive that I just need more time, and if I focused only on that video for as long as it would take me to finish it, I'd be gone for longer than I like being gone from the channel. So that one is on the back burner for just a couple of days while I put this one together. Today, I am here once again to catch you up on what's going on in the Blake Lively / Justin Baldoni / It Ends With Us fallout. This time around, I am going to read you more specifics from Baldoni's complaint, just since I had already done that with Blake's. I still don't feel as if there's anything that I didn't address in my last video that changes the thesis. Nothing really new is coming out in this one, just some more specific details. Nothing in this lawsuit that was filed proves any kind of innocence for Justin Baldoni. And we're going to get to why and how that is the entire conceit of this lawsuit, is that it doesn't even matter whether or not they do prove that. We're going to get to all of that in a bit. But once again, nobody who told me, just read the lawsuit, pointed to anything in there that would or could have changed my mind. It's mostly a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with the concept of taking sides, even in positions where there's a pretty clear abuser and a pretty clear victim. And I think you don't need to look around my channel very long to realize that I'm quite comfortable with taking sides. Thank you. I also don't think that to take the side of a victim, you have to be a fan of theirs, or that you would have to excuse things that you otherwise find inexcusable just to recognize somebody as a victim when they are one. I both believe that and also believe that we are at a point in this current discourse about Blake Lively where one of the absolute least helpful things that I could do would be to sit here and continue to hammer in the PR-approved talking points by Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel. You all already know why everybody hates Blake Lively. You do not need to hear that from me as well. That doesn't mean I think the plantation wedding was cool. That doesn't mean that I don't think people have a right to have disagreements with promoting the alcohol tie-in, etc., etc. I already explained that I'm just done talking about whether or not I personally like Blake Lively. I don't think that's relevant to this conversation. That's going to continue to be the case in this one. So I don't want to actually start with reading Justin's lawsuit. I want to start with the entire current state of lawsuits right now as we stand. The first lawsuit that got filed in this whole mess was by Stephanie Jones of Jones Works, Baldoni's former PR representation. Steph Jones is suing Baldoni, Wayfarer, and his new PR representation, Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel, for breach of contract and for implicating Steph Jones in their smear campaign against Blake Lively. It feels pretty safe to assume at this point that Steph Jones and Blake Lively's team worked together on their complaints once Steph had noticed the messages on Jennifer Abel's company phone after Jen quit / was fired. It sounds like Jen resigned and then was working her notice, but then they noticed that she was allegedly stealing company documents and also clients on her way out, so she was fired and asked to turn over her technology, which was then subpoenaed and looked through. Second and third lawsuits were filed on the same day, but I'm talking about Blake's first because Blake's was already pretty much in the process of being filed for longer, and Baldoni's lawyers are bullshitting you about that. Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer and his new PR representation, but she had to get a right to sue first, as she is making a workplace sexual harassment claim, and that is literally how it works. The lawsuit Blake eventually filed was a mirror of her existing complaint, which included the lack of industry standard protections like nudity riders or the consistent supervision of an intimacy coordinator while rehearsing or filming, inappropriate workplace conduct on the part of both Baldoni and Jamie Heath, a producer on the film, and also Baldoni's only remaining co-host on the Man Enough podcast now that their token woman quit. Baldoni is accused of improvising during intimate scenes without the intimacy coordinator present, dragging his lips along Blake Lively's neck and commenting on how good she smells during a time where they weren't even mic'd up for audio for a scene, just filming something that didn't require audio. And then when she objected to it, he defended himself by saying that he isn't even attracted to her. There are other things outlined in the complaint as well. Jamie Heath showing Blake Lively a video of his wife giving birth. He and Justin Baldoni both speaking about their former pornography consumption and their sex lives with their wives. Justin asking Blake Lively's trainer how quickly she could lose weight after she gave birth, and also offering to set Blake up with some woo-woo health specialist after he had given her and the baby either strep or COVID. He gave her the information for some woo-woo medical specialist, and it turned out to be a weight loss specialist, according to Blake's complaint. Also, Justin telling Blake in the presence of a specified witness, her driver, that he had not always asked for consent and had not always listened when previous partners said no during previous sexual encounters, and that he was sharing it as an example of how everybody has things to grow from, and that he did that because he had previously been sexually assaulted by a partner. Something he has since come out publicly about. Blake's complaint also, of course, hinges not just on workplace harassment, but also on the retaliation that she faced for reporting it and for threatening to walk away from filming unless she got her protections to return to set. Text messages subpoenaed from the same company device that the Jones Works suit sourced evidence from show things like Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel delighting in negative press that they seem to have planted or boosted about Blake Lively. Or Justin Baldoni messaging them a screenshot of a very viral hate post about Hailey Bieber and saying we would need something like this. Messages between the PR demons that say things like, he wants to feel like she can be buried and we can't write it down to him what we will do to her. Blake's suit includes both emotional damages, like pain and suffering, and also monetary claims for damage done to her brand and business and lost wages. But again, this is based off of a workplace sexual harassment claim, which is why she needed the right to sue letter first. And then, of course, the only remaining lawsuit to tell you about would be Baldoni's lawsuit against the New York Times, which I did talk about in my most recent video, and I'm about to go into further detail on. Despite Baldoni's lawyers' bluster about how they have more lawsuits to file and how they're directly planning on suing Blake Lively and Brian Reynolds, nothing else has surfaced so far. A bunch of you agreed with me, too, when I said that this lawsuit against the New York Times felt to me like a strategic lawsuit against public participation, and that it sounded to me like exactly the kind of thing anti-slap legislation would swat down. Baldoni and company are suing the New York Times for reporting on Blake's lawsuit, trying to claim libel, and also trying to claim that by publishing before the agreed-upon deadline, but also after Baldoni's team responded, that the New York Times broke an implied contract. I still don't really understand that part. I asked for a second opinion in the last video, and it really sounds like you're allowed to publish an article once you've gotten a response. But let me get into more of the specifics of the complaint here. I did notice that the lawsuit as attached to Variety now begins with a notice of errata and that some of the pages have been redacted. Plaintiffs Wayfarer Studio LLC, Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, Steve Sarowitz, Melissa Nathan, the agency group PR LLC, TAG, Jennifer Abel, RWA Communications, Jed Wallace, and Street Relations Inc. Collectively, plaintiffs, by and through their counsel, hereby file this notice of errata to complaint regarding the following. The complaint contained language and images on pages 14 through 16 and 20, subject to the reporter's privilege. The privileged language and images have been omitted per request in the corrected version of the complaint attached hereto as Exhibit A. Dated January 2nd, 2025. Which made me wish that I had downloaded a copy the first night it was up. Does anybody know what was redacted? Does anybody have a copy from the first night? If you do, please let me know. I would love to know, and I will update in a future video. But, continuing. Complaint for damages for libel, false light invasion of privacy, promissory fraud, and breach of implied in-fact contract. Demand for a jury trial. Requested plaintiff's response to an imminent 4,000-word bombshell story concerning their alleged orchestration of a smear campaign targeting Blake Lively, purportedly in response to Lively's disclosure of concerns about the working environment on the set of It Ends With Us. The film's production company, Wayfarer, its principals, Baldoni and Heath, and its public relations representatives, Nathan and Abel, were asked to provide on-the-record comment and to notify the Times of any inaccuracies by noon Eastern Standard Time the next day. On December 21st, 2024, a mere 14 hours overnight, plaintiffs' representatives promptly denied Lively's accusations as reported by the Times and criticized both Lively and the Times' reliance on cherry-picked and altered communication stripped of necessary context and deliberately spliced to mislead. Despite its claims to have reviewed these along with other documents, the Times relied almost entirely on Lively's unverified and self-serving narrative, lifting it nearly verbatim while disregarding an abundance of evidence that contradicted her claims and exposed her true motives. But the Times did not care. Given the breadth of the article and the coordinated drop, it is readily apparent that the Times had been quietly working in concert with Lively's team for weeks or months. The Times participated actively in the legal maneuvering at the heart of Lively's strategy. Notably, Lively chose not to file a lawsuit against Baldoni, Wayfarer, or any of the plaintiffs, a choice that spared her from the scrutiny of the discovery process, including answering questions under oath and producing her communications. This decision was no accident. First, her administrative complaint is rife with blatant falsehoods and egregious misrepresentations that would have subjected her to dismissal if not sanctions. Second, pursuing former legal action would have derailed her true objective, an orchestrated campaign to rehabilitate her public image. Instead, Lively filed a request for a right-to-sue letter with the California Civil Rights Department, CRD, a procedural formality that does not require pleadings, remains confidential unless leaked, as it was here, and crucially, does not subject the complainant to discovery. While such a letter can precede a lawsuit, it is clear that litigation was never her ultimate goal. Her real intention was to weaponize the appearance of legitimacy conferred by a numbered legal document to launch salacious, headline-grabbing allegations and reshape her public persona at the expense of the plaintiffs. This is just not true. It just is genuinely untrue. Like I said, Blake has sued by now. She needed to sue. Here are 2 comments from my last video that really drilled in that she needed to get the right to sue before she could sue, since, a right to sue gives you the right to sue. Anaphylactic said, Lively filing the civil rights complaint is a requirement by California state law if you're going to sue an employer for workplace harassment. She didn't do it because she was scared of a discovery process. She literally cannot sue without having filed her complaint first. Baldoni's attorney either knows this and thinks the rest of us are stupid, or he is even less competent than I realized. And AM Fibers said, employment attorney here, you don't file a charge of discrimination instead of a lawsuit, you file it before a lawsuit. As soon as I heard Baldoni's team try to say that she was trying to avoid discovery, I knew they were full of shit. More context. Basically, all federal employment discrimination laws require that you file an administrative charge before you can file a lawsuit. State laws vary, but most people file a charge first so that they can sue in federal court where they can bring both federal and state claims. When you file a charge of discrimination, you can file with your state attorney or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, and sometimes you file with one and they transfer it to the other due to workload considerations. If you go through the state process first, once that is done, the EEOC will review the state agency's findings. In my experience, they basically just rubber stamp it and issue a right to sue letter. All that to say, again, you don't file a charge of discrimination instead of a lawsuit. You file it before a lawsuit. I'm sure Blake Lively's team analyzed the best course of action, but if she wanted to bring a sexual harassment claim, which is a type of gender discrimination under federal law, she likely had to file with the Civil Rights Department first. It wasn't some underhanded tactic to avoid discovery. Now, I will agree that charges of discrimination are confidential, but that only applies to the government. In other words, you can't get it in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. Either party can share it, though, if they want. At least in my state. California might be different, but I would be surprised if Blake leaked something she didn't have the rights to. Lively found willing allies at the New York Times, which uncritically embraced her Civil Rights Department complaint as fact and disregarded the plaintiff's emphatic objections. Without even waiting for the response deadline of noon Eastern Standard Time on December 21st, 2024, the Times rushed to publish its inflammatory article, We Can Bury Anyone, Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine, at 10:11 a.m., nearly 2 hours early. This brazen disregard for journalistic integrity and fairness resulted in an article rife with inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and omissions. In an era where public trust in media has reached a historic low and legacy outlets are increasingly criticized as biased and agenda-driven, the Times has chosen to double down on sensationalism and oversimplified narratives. Rather than striving for accuracy and balance, it has prioritized hollow virtue signaling over substantive reporting, further eroding its credibility and exacerbating the very mistrust it claims to combat. The article's central thesis, encapsulated in a defamatory headline designed to immediately mislead the reader, is that plaintiffs orchestrated a retaliatory public relations campaign against Lively for speaking out about sexual harassment, a premise that is categorically false and easily disproven. If the Times truly reviewed the thousands of private communications it claimed to have obtained, its reporters would have seen incontrovertible evidence that it was Lively, not plaintiffs, who engaged in a calculated smear campaign. The complete communications demonstrate beyond question that plaintiffs had no intention of destroying or burying Lively through aggressive tactics. On the contrary, Baldoni consistently expressed his desire to avoid harming Lively and protect the film, but also recognized a legitimate need for public relations protections in light of Lively's false and damaging claims. And then, I guess, as evidence to that effect, they have a screenshot of a group chat between Justin and his PR demons before the lawsuit continues. Good morning! Sharing with you a perfect example of why we don't use, quote, bots, end quote. I wouldn't even worry to think they've hired a team as A, nothing to find, B, they hired an awful team, which I've sent to our guy to track and pull, so we have evidence of it. This below should answer everyone's questions on what a bot team looks like when every single comment suddenly skews in her favor in a nonsensical way. At least sprinkle them in. She needs to fire her bot team. Justin: how can we say somehow that we are not doing any of this? It looks like we are trying to take her down. Melissa: it doesn't. They are doing all of this themselves, and it's really obvious. This is bots. Zionist after her because she is friends with Gigi. Same thing with, and then I can't see what the rest of it says. This is a screenshot of a comment with no likes on an Instagram post. Justin says, okay, please monitor. Things I'm more worried about is that we are planting these stories, which is not true, obviously. Jen Abel, old number, chiming in here. The people saying that these are bots and this is a PR play on your side is a minority voice compared to the thousands and thousands who are calling it what it is and reacting to Blake's own actions and interviews. We never want the action of the minority to dictate what we do on our end. We have to always look at the big picture, which is still enormously on your side, but I do see a want and a need from fans to move on. People are now commenting that they are bored with the many articles still coming out about this drama. When we move on, they do too. So we need to find ways to keep elevating not just the DV reaction, but also the other things in your life like family, being back home, and Wayfarer. That's not tone deaf, in my opinion, but sends the message that you are focusing on what really matters, and that's what will help with the Blake narrative too. My point of view. Also another screenshot from Tag Team sharing an article. It ends with us. Sony chief praises Blake Lively for advancing the conversation around domestic violence. Person who took the screenshot responded, they messaged me 5 minutes before this went up. Another one messaged from Tag Team. We don't know from who, it just says Tag Team. Exclusive, Blake Lively was really impatient on It Ends With Us set as drama rumors swell. Tension was so obvious. Jamie Heath responds, so glad Blake was praised. That's underlined for some reason. Let her get a win. It would be nice to have a Sony executive praise Justin. The article is predicated on Lively's CRD complaint, which references text exchanges between Melissa and Abel as purported evidence that Nathan planted a negative story in the Daily Mail titled, Is Blake Lively Set to Be Cancelled? Lively's portrayal is categorically false, misleading, and devoid of factual basis, yet knowingly endorsed by the Times, which claims to have reviewed thousands of pages of text messages and emails. The smear campaign hinges on an August 16th text exchange in which Nathan allegedly shared a link to this article with Abel. The text exchange shows Abel responding, wow, followed by, you really outdid yourself with this one, to which Nathan allegedly replied, that's why you hired me, right? I'm the best. These messages constitute the entirety of the purported evidence underlying the allegations of a smear campaign orchestrated on behalf of Baldoni. They don't, but these people think you're stupid. As I've already mentioned, those were not the only things that constitute the entirety of the smear. They don't address the thing where Baldoni was shopping for hated women because he wanted the people who destroyed Amber Heard to destroy Blake Lively for him. They don't address what it meant for Jed to be killing it on Reddit. Those specific things are not addressed. They only address things that they think that they can pull over on the audience. The Times, however, was aware that these text messages were unscrupulously altered and selectively edited, enabling both Lively and her team and the Times to propagate a false smear campaign narrative designed to destroy plaintiffs. Specifically, in the immediately preceding text exchange on August 16th, Nathan forwarded a screenshot of a message from a reporter informing her, for the first time, of a Daily Mail article. In response, Nathan wrote, "Damn, this is not fair because it's also not me," followed by, "Everything now looks like it's me," conclusively refuting her involvement in the creation or dissemination of the article. And we can see here, we have a screenshot. And do you notice this big, obnoxious red circle over the middle of it? There's a big red line also that points to say that that was all excluded, and then that only the article was included. But if we look at this a little bit closer, and I did make it as big as I could just by expanding it, there's something underneath that red circle. It took me quite a bit of time to make sure that I wasn't just seeing what I wanted to see. I double-checked with people who have iPhones. They confirmed it for me. Look underneath that red circle. It says you unsent a message. Yeah, I don't know what they unsent. I have no idea what is unsent there, but I checked. I asked on Blue Sky for people with iPhones to confirm, and they confirmed to me that there's no way that that says anything other than you unsent a message. So if we are saying, as the lawyer is, that anything other than messages completely in their full context is inadmissible as any kind of evidence, I don't think that I need to give a shit what is in these messages where they have unsent messages. I don't trust these messages, especially not with the amount of little black boxes or big red circles that just so happen to cut things off. We went over this part in the last video as well, but I will read it again here. Here's their argument that one missing upside down smiley face emoji should recontextualize the entire conversation between Jen and Melissa. Further evidence of the Times' complicity arises from its apparent endorsement of the criminal alteration of these text messages by Lively. After Nathan forwarded a screenshot of the article link, Abel responded with, "You really outdid yourself with this piece, upside down smiley face," adding an upside down smiley face to indicate the sarcastic nature of her message. The upside down smiley face is commonly used to convey irony, sarcasm, joking, or a sense of goofiness or silliness. In her CRD complaint, Lively deliberately excluded not only the preceding screenshot of the text exchange disproving Nathan's involvement in the story, but also the upside-down smiley face emoji, which fundamentally alters the sarcastic tone of Abel's message and misleads the reader into interpreting her response as serious. This omitted context is critical, as it demonstrates that each subsequent message in the exchange was similarly intended as sarcasm, including Nathan's statement, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." Further review of the text message exchange, also excluded from both Lively's CRD complaint and from the Times article, unequivocally shows that Abel and Nathan were engaging in a sarcastic and joking manner, as evidenced by the use of the ha-ha tap-back reaction. When read in full, the exchange reveals Nathan and Abel engaging in facetious, juvenile banter, not conspiring against Lively. The Times relied on Lively's CRD complaint and, based solely on this exchange, intentionally duped readers into believing that Baldoni orchestrated a smear campaign, purportedly using Nathan and Abel as his accomplices. Indeed, the Times, like Lively, misrepresented these communications to support its salacious and unfounded smear campaign narrative. This calculated distortion underscores the article's lack of credibility and its reliance on sensationalism over substantive truth. Any negative press about Lively was unequivocally a consequence of her own actions. Even the Times itself acknowledged Lively's public missteps in an August 17, 2024 article titled "It Ends With Us, the Press Tour Drama Explained." In it, reporter Shivani Gonzalez observed, "Lively's promotion of the movie has included a push for her new hair care line, discussion of the clothes in the movies, and response to questions about abuse, which have been criticized as shallow and tone-deaf." Baldoni, by contrast, has emphasized the importance of raising awareness of domestic violence and providing resources for those in similar situations. And then we have just an entire wall of text entirely made up of Blake Lively critical articles that were written by women. All of these are by women. They went through and specifically found ones written by women. Yeah, no, I don't buy this. Also, as a commenter pointed out on my last video, a lot of archiving technology fully don't even recognize emojis, so it being missing really might have just been genuinely because that's what it looked like in the software. Might have just been a technical difficulty. Again, the full messages in this context don't even feel to me like they remotely disprove Melissa Nathan having her thumb on the scales of public opinion against Blake Lively here. Take this other message they included of her just so happening to forward the Kirsty Flaw little bump comment to somebody at TMZ. TMZ says, LMAO, we interviewed her too. Let me find that interview. Fucked her. Melissa says, when? LOL. Also, why the fuck am I in this too? TMZ reporter says, you're a starlet. Fuck this week. How was the stunt? Winky face. And then we cannot see whatever Melissa responded, and we don't know what the stunt was. But I don't understand why they think this doesn't make it look like she was in cahoots with TMZ. She was sending them the little bump reporter lady. Another one where they think that they're showing me something, but they're showing me something else. We didn't tell Jed to go after the idea that her promo was inappropriate. That happened organically. So what were you telling Jed? What did you tell Jed to go after, and how did Jed go after it? They don't really go into that. Spoiler alert. Lively's marketing efforts, which included encouraging audiences to grab your friends, wear your florals while promoting her hair care and alcohol brands, were widely criticized as insensitive. This was particularly glaring given World Health Organization statistics showing that 55% of domestic violence incidents involve alcohol. Her actions naturally triggered organic public criticism and unleashed a cycle of negative coverage, including, as is common in the digital age, the resurfacing of old, unflattering content. Far from being the product of a calculated smear campaign by plaintiffs, the backlash against Lively was the inevitable fallout of her own tone-deaf messaging and self-promotional tactics, amplified by her inability to read the room in addressing such a serious subject. Okay, here's the thing. I am going to read you other parts of this lawsuit because it's just really awful and really easy for me to argue with when it tries to get into specifics, but I could cut this section where I'm reading from Justin Baldoni's lawsuit off pretty much here, and you would get all you needed to get. This is the argument. This is the thing they're waving around as proof. Because, yeah, they can pretend like getting invited into Lively's trailer once means that Baldoni never barged in the future, even though I don't find that convincing. They probably are fully aware that that's not entirely convincing. But it doesn't have to be. The most important part of Brian Friedman's argument on behalf of Justin Baldoni here isn't actually that Justin didn't do anything wrong. It's nice for them if that's how you come away. If you go defend him in the comment section of people's videos like mine, even to the point sometimes of accusing somebody of lying about their own sexual assault trauma, which I think is evil behavior, and don't do that, and it gets you permanently banned from my comment section. Thank you. But you do that because you have scooped out any critical thinking and you have replaced it with just like mainlined misogynistic slop for like 10 years, I think. And that is a bonus to them. It is certainly a bonus to them when people go and further their PR efforts on their behalf. But the argument they actually need to make, and the argument that I think they're actually making pretty successfully, even though I hate it, is simply that you, dear viewer, did not fall for anything. That you have nothing to reconsider. That this was, in fact, all Blake's fault all along. And also that you should never, ever, ever question the narratives that are fed to you by people like Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel. You should never wonder if a hate train you jumped on is being conducted by a man who stands to greatly benefit from it, because you just decided on your own that his target was an irredeemable, bitchy mean girl. That's their argument. That's it! There are some other little attempted gotchas that I want to go over that, as I've already said, don't do anything for me. And I do want to go over some of those, and I will. But the majority of what this complaint is, I would say, is concerned with playing you for an absolute fucking fool, and also convincing you that it's not possible for them to do that. I did actually over an hour worth of line reads for this already, and I have not gotten through even half of Whiny Baby Boy's complaint. And I really do want to move my focus back onto the other videos I want to make. So at this point, even though I know I'm still gonna get, Baba, you didn't read the whole complaint. You didn't read my comfort predator's entire whiny screed. And they're gonna call me like a harpy feminist shill for it or whatever. I don't care. I'm gonna get those comments no matter what. Keep them coming. I think it's actually genuinely really great for my algorithm. Channel's been doing awesome lately. Thank you. But I am going to move into more of a debunking mode than I am a full reading everything out loud mode. I feel like I have read enough already for you to understand the argument, so let's start getting in the weeds. First of all, as I already mentioned in my last video, they full-on confirm that Jamie Heath showed Blake the video of his wife giving birth. So here's that. The Times compounded its journalistic failures by uncritically advancing Lively's unsubstantiated claims of sexual harassment against Heath and Baldoni. For example, the article, based on Lively's CRD complaint, sensationally alleges that Mr. Heath had shown Lively a video of his naked wife, with Lively's CRD complaint even labeling the footage as pornography. This claim is patently absurd. The video in question was a non-pornographic recording of Heath's wife and baby during a home birth, a deeply personal one with no sexual overtone. To distort this benign event into an act of sexual misconduct is outrageous and emblematic of the lengths to which Lively and her collaborators are willing to go to defame plaintiffs. Still a video referenced in the lawsuit, not in my video because I'm not a freak. But it also straight up lies. So it says that Blake claimed in her complaint that the video was pornographic, but she didn't. She very clearly stated that she thought it was pornographic at first and that it was a video of his wife giving birth naked, which is true. I'm gonna read from her complaint here because I can tell Brian Friedman is hoping that recency bias will let them just overwrite what Blake's actual narrative was. To add insult to injury, Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively and her assistant on set and started playing a video of a fully nude woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought he was showing her pornography and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth. Miss Lively was alarmed and asked Mr. Heath if his wife knew she was sharing the video, to which he replied, "She isn't weird about this stuff," as if Miss Lively was weird for not welcoming it. Miss Lively and her assistant excused themselves, stunned that Mr. Heath had shown them a nude video. And that's not the only part of this argument that I don't find compelling. Here's why we had to move into the debunking mode. I have a lot to say about this, actually. If you're not familiar with the plot of It Ends With Us, my god, I envy you at this point. So suppose we are accepting that there was a creative discussion where they were trying to decide whether or not Blake Lively's character would give birth in a water birth. Even if that was a question, I think it still wouldn't justify just randomly showing somebody a video of a water birth without warning. But even just that claim feels so strange to me because of the plot of the book and the movie. The climax of It Ends With Us. The moment is Lily Blossom Bloom saying the title of the book to her baby, who she just named after her abusive husband's dead brother. Stay with me, I'm so sorry. The climax of the movie is Lily giving birth in a hospital with Ryle, her abuser and the father of her baby there, and realizing once she has given birth, as she watches him hold the baby, that she should end her relationship with Ryle because I guess it would be worse to let a daughter grow up watching her mother be abused than to let a son grow up watching his father abuse his mother. Which, okay, there's obviously a lot to be said about all of that, but we are bottling all of that away and not unpacking any of it right now. That's the plot. That is the plot of the book. The book, and in the sequel, Ryle is given access to the baby. This is the book that Baldoni thought was, like, so important and inspiring and sexy and blah, blah, blah. But, like, Lily breaks up with Ryle in the hospital. It is almost certainly due to the presence of nurses, the accessibility of a call light for an emergency, potential witnesses, and people who would intervene, that she is at all able to come to her conclusion and make that decision for herself. And it's also because of all of those things that Lily was safe to make that decision and to do what she did where she did it. Ryle is a canonically abusive and violent man, and the moment that Lily breaks up with him is somewhere that is private, but still in a place full of potential witnesses and people who could intervene if he became violent and abusive in response to being broken up with. So why would they want to change that and do a water birth? I'm aware not every water birth is a home birth, but by removing the context of the breakup from the hospital, you also remove a lot of the safety that Lily had in making that decision and doing the breakup. You force her to do it Where? At home, alone, with this violent man and maybe a doula? A character who they would need to take pains to introduce because it's a canon digression, and also because American audiences are not super familiar with water births, I don't think. So even if they did want to change it and make it a water birth in the film, I'd say that's a bigger misunderstanding of the source material and the dynamics between safely leaving an abusive relationship than anything about Blake Lively wanting her character to have expensive shoes is. And if they didn't want to make it a water birth in the movie, we're right back to how the fuck did he think it was appropriate to show her a video of his wife giving birth, which is actually the central question at all times, with and without any context here. All right, another thing we have already discussed, Justin's apparent belief that one invitation once gave him blanket permission to barge in on Blake. Adding to the sexual harassment narrative is the article's parroted accusation that both men repeatedly entered her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding. What Lively and the article fail to mention is that Lively invited Baldoni into her trailer while pumping to work out their lines. And here are the infamous text messages. Screenshot from Justin Baldoni's phone. New contact name suggested with mushrooms around the letter B and then Lively. I'm not sure if that's because of Justin's phone or if that's something Blake sets on her end. He texted, Blake, ugh, I'm so sorry to hear you and baby are sick. Broken heart emoji. I know it's literally the last thing you needed right now on top of a tough week. I pray it comes and goes with mild symptoms, and more than anything, that he is okay. If you feel up for it, I'm here absolutely anytime and would love to check in. I know this week was a lot, and I'm committed to making things run smoother across the board. That message from Baldoni is in May. Blake responds June 2nd. 2023. Our mistake. Molly did get the new pages at 11 p.m. last night. She didn't realize they were new, but new pages can always be sent to me as well, please. X. And on June 3rd, she texted, I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines. Justin, copy, eating with crew and we'll head that way. Blake, take your time. Justin, I'm here. I'll meet you in Justin, I'm here. I'll meet you in hair and makeup. Blake, sorry, I'm just seeing this. And then Justin sent her the lines that she didn't get until 11 p.m. the night before. I don't feel like I need to go over all the reasons that this is wrong and also an insult to your intelligence, but just a few. This was clearly a specific invitation for a specific time. Pumping and breastfeeding are two different things. Beginning to breastfeed or pump in public and knowing you'll be doing that with people watching you the whole time is a very different thing from beginning to do something in private and being barged in on. But this is the big feminist dude. This is the man enough guy, and he's man enough to decide what women are allowed to be uncomfortable or not when he does it. And here we go, another one I also already addressed in the last video. It's almost like I read this complaint before I made a video about it, huh? I did accidentally cut the part, though, where I read all of this out loud because it's the part where I got really angry, but I did still talk about it. Here is their attempt at defense for Justin calling Blake sexy, which again, much like the birth defense, they are confirming happened. Likewise, the allegation that Baldoni inappropriately described Lively's character's attire as sexy is exaggerated and misleading. The text exchanges between Baldoni and Lively show that Lively had insisted that her character's clothing be, quote, much sexier, end quote. When Baldoni later used the word sexy, he was just responding to her creative input, not objectifying her personally. Lively set the tone that Baldoni heeded during the creative process. May 17th, 2023. Just text Ange this also. We'll show you both ways, but beanie is much sexier. It's the look. Feels TV without, especially with a crop top in the snow. It justifies the rest of the skin. And also is a girl I would check out washing down the street because it washes the effort off the rest of the look. Justin heart reacted. May 18th, 2023, Justin Baldoni. Good morning. If you don't have time to listen with morning craziness, here is text. Just want to make sure okay with throwing the jacket on from yesterday morning or putting it on your dash. I want to line up a shot and see if I can use just a piece of the shoulder for the establishing shot, the old cafe we didn't get yesterday. I might not need it, but just want to cover. See you soon. Blake Lively kept an audio message from you. If it's just her shoulder, no problem. If it's her body or head, etc., then it should be me. I was wondering about not having that shot, but kept to myself. Smiley face. Justin Baldoni. Yeah, we ran out of time. I want to line it up with the shoulder, and if it doesn't work, then when you're dressed, we'll figure it out. By the way, if you're ever wondering if we have a shot or need one, I don't ever feel it's overstepping if you bring it up to me. And then there's just more. He says, FYI, Brandon just landed. We're talking character, no one waiting. Blake, mortified. They dropped me off at the flower shop. I was in the wrong spot. And then it looks like it's a day later at 4:02 p.m. I can't see this whole text. It says, just wanted to check on you this morning after. After what, Justin? Weird it cuts off there, huh? Again, as I already said in my last video, to pretend that there is no difference between your boss and director calling you sexy and then getting curt and saying, oh, I must have missed the HR meeting when you object, and you sending a text to both the director and the wardrobe person saying that a hat is sexier for a character than not wearing the hat is. It's an insult to your intelligence. They think you're stupid. It's genuinely ridiculous. It also does not address the claim that other women felt objectified by him either. It just wants to try to give you something to run with so that you can go and further their smear campaign for them. Another thing they want you to use for that is their claim that Blake refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator when what she said was actually that she would meet the intimacy coordinator when they started. Also misleading, the article draws on Lively's assertion that Baldoni improvised unwanted kissing and discussed his sex life. However, both the Times and Lively intentionally exclude that Lively refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator to plan out the film's sex scenes. Baldoni, in turn, was forced to meet with the intimacy coordinator alone and relay any suggestions to Lively separately. Notwithstanding Baldoni's reluctance, he and Lively would later sketch out the scenes together, absent the intimacy coordinator. As part of those creative discussions, Baldoni and Lively sought to personalize and develop their characters, and in doing so, engaged in conversation about their individual experiences. The Times, taking Lively's California Civil Rights Department complaint as true, characterizes this discussion as an inappropriate attempt by Baldoni to talk about his sex life. It was not. More still, Baldoni consistently acted at the direction of the intimacy coordinator. These baseless accusations do not constitute sexual harassment. So here's a screenshot of a message between Justin Baldoni and a female producer. He's texting a screenshot of a message between him and Blake. He messaged, just hired intimacy coordinator, who I love. We'll set you up to meet / FaceTime with her next week for intro. Blake Lively, I feel good. I can meet her when we start. Smiley face. Thank you, though. He texted, just FYI, just wanted to tell you about this. Seems she doesn't want to meet intimacy coordinator until we start, which may mess up the workflow, but I can still meet with her, of course. Female producer, that's fine if she doesn't want to meet her now. You'll just have to walk her through what you and intimacy coordinator are thinking. And then he sent a thumbs up emoji. And I'm still baffled by what the fuck Justin Baldoni thinks an intimacy coordinator is for. Would he just go talk to a stunt coordinator and then simply direct and rehearse stunts with another actor without the stunt coordinator being there to ensure safety? While part of the intimacy coordinator's job can be offering suggestions and helping to plan out what goes on in those scenes, as is implied here, although also it's funny, right, that he's like jumping to blame a woman for the sex scenes. It's a little funny. Would love to hear from the intimacy coordinator, because what is being offered up here are not her notes, they are Justin's notes from when he met with her, which don't actually tell me anything. Which wouldn't actually tell me anything, but they're also not even included in this complaint. It's so much more crucial. It's the most crucial part of an intimacy coordinator's job for them to be on set while intimate scenes are being rehearsed or performed. And I just don't think that not wanting to meet someone on your own time off the job is the same thing as not wanting them to be there and anticipating that they will be there and protect you when you need them to when you are at your job, where they also got hired to go be. Anyway, the complaint continues. Justin Baldoni is a soaking wet little meow meow. Blake Lively took over his movie, etc., etc. Despite its efforts to craft a distorted narrative, The Times fails to address a glaring contradiction. In Lively's California Civil Rights complaint, after the execution of the Protections for Return to Production agreement in November 2023, Lively herself acknowledges that the film was completed, marketed, and released safely and successfully. While Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Heath disagreed with Lively's rationale for requesting the document, many of its provisions were already standard practice, they chose to comply for the sake of the film and to ensure Lively's comfort. Crucially, Lively concedes that neither Baldoni nor Heath engaged in any harassing behavior following the agreement in November 2023. Furthermore, she admits that her stated concerns were sufficiently addressed at that time. This admission directly undermines her allegations of retaliation and strips her claims of credibility. Without the fabricated smear campaign narrative propping up her complaint, Lively's retaliation claim collapses under its own contradictions, exposing it as yet another ploy to salvage her public image rather than pursue any legitimate grievance. The fact is that Lively embarked on a hostile takeover of the production, strong-arming Sony into blessing her with ultimate control. As they became increasingly frantic and unsettled by the usurpation of their roles, Baldoni remained resolute that they continue to take the high road and be proud of the beautiful baby they had all made together. Notwithstanding, Lively waged war on Baldoni, weaponizing innocuous interactions from May and June 2023, long before there was any tension between them, to vilify and discredit him. At the time, Baldoni and Lively had a solid working relationship, and Lively expressed no unease around him. Only after the writer's strike had ended and filming was set to resume did Lively express any concern about returning to set. In response, Wayfarer and Baldoni agreed to all of Lively's demands. Text messages to Dream Team, which is Justin's editors. He messages, just curious if you guys have peeked at her cut and if anything has changed. Editor number 2. I have just been told that we are not permitted to look. Justin, haha, wow. When did that happen? Editor 1, as per Sony. Editor number 2, this evening through Redacted. Justin Baldoni, wow, okay then. The editors and director isn't allowed to look at an actress's cut? Got it. Well, here we go. We will keep taking the high road. To suggest, as the Times does, that plaintiffs engaged in dark arts to destroy Lively's reputation is to ignore that Lively had long-standing reputational challenges and that plaintiffs' public relation efforts were rudimentary, above board, and entirely defensive. The Times willingly omits any meaningful discussion of the true source of tension between Lively and plaintiffs, which was Lively's brazen and calculated effort to expropriate the film. Another text message in Tag Team, somebody messages, like, come on, we had nothing to do with that. And somebody else responds, this is crazy. She doesn't have a good reputation. All this is organic stuff from real people making TikToks, not bots. Redacted. Exactly. If it was just comments, I'd be like, oops, but it's not, lol. Why? Why would you be like, oops? What would make you think oops if it was just comments? Are you seeding comments? Is it because you're seeding comments? What the fuck does Jed do? Tell me what Jed does. Tell me what the fuck Jed does. Tell me what you told Jed to do. Is that Jed? Is that Jed who's redacted? Is that somebody who works with Jed? I don't know. There are some messages between the Dream Team, and honestly, it's blurry, and I feel like I'm reading so many messages out loud. The gist of this one is Editor 1 checking in. I hope you're hanging in there. We're gonna get through this, damn it. Justin, thank you for checking in. I've sat with it, and I think the best path forward spiritually and what's best for the movie is that I suck it up and let her in. I've sent a message requesting that it start on the 18th, and we would just let her in until she leaves, and then her cuts and updates throughout the process. I'll let you guys know what she says. Thanks for being awesome, Dream Team. They both kiss his ass. There's something, we can't see the beginning of the message. We could see detach, and I think that's what's marked under one of these red circles. I don't think all the red circles are to redact things on purpose, but I don't know. We made a beautiful baby together. The baby might not grow up tone exactly who we thought, but it's still beautiful. That's what I'm holding on to. Very proud of us. And then Editor 1 says, wow, I can't say I'm shocked because I was hoping that you were going to be able to not let this beat you down, and it sounds like you have achieved that. And yes, the movie we handed her was so good that even if it's been screwed with, the base work will still shine through. The last I heard was that she was putting back a fair amount of our version. Just not sure what that entailed or to what extent. Yes, you'll find out today. Hang in there, and we'll all catch up when the wounds are not quite as fresh. Sending love to you both. The Times' assertion that plaintiffs orchestrated a campaign to tarnish Lively's reputation blatantly disregards her bizarre behavior at the time and misrepresents plaintiffs' actions, which were modest, transparent, and purely defensive. The article entirely sidesteps the real source of conflict between Lively and plaintiffs, Lively's calculated and audacious attempt to seize control of the film. Here are some more messages from his PR team proving that he's a whiny little baby, and then I'm just going to keep reading for a little bit. Monday, June 3rd, Jen Abel messaging, hi, Jamie just filled me in about BookCon. I know this is devastating and such a kick in the gut. It's petty and childish at this point. I'm just making sure you're okay. We will get through this. Eye on the prize. Her attending BookCon is a win for the film, ultimately, and if she wants to drag her ass to Texas, then let her. You can be home with your family, which is important. Heart. Justin Baldoni on June 3rd. She's kicked me out officially from the film now. She's finishing it all. I can't be involved. Music, sound, VFX, everything. I'll make it through somehow. Just need to feel it all. For some reason, the other messages seem to be from February, but they're just presented with the June ones. Hey, can we get a call on the books to discuss overall strategy and also the sensitivity of what we're going into with the release? I'd love Steph there as well with Jamie and Tara. Jen Abel, absolutely. Steph is still recovering from surgery and likely not available for this until another week. I can check with her schedule and come back to you with dates. We talked about the sensitivity and importance of what we can say about the No More partnership on the last touch base we had with Jamie and Ashmi, as we need to hone in on that messaging and start planting those seeds as we get closer. Also, any word if it has been proposed yet to Sony about pushing release to July? Justin, no. This is sensitivity about Blake. Jen, copy. Justin, give Jamie a call right now so he can update you on what's happening. Jen Abel, oh boy, okay, calling him now. Just spoke to him. What a horrible person, but nothing we can't handle. What's important is that you do what you need to do and have the space to make a great movie. I'll touch base with Steph and get a sense of her recovery and when she will be up for a call. Broken heart emoji, prayer hands emoji, intact heart emoji. Notably absent from the Times' narrative is Lively's insistence on obtaining editing privileges and demanding her own version of the film, a departure from industry standards. Even more egregiously, Lively leveraged her promotional commitments to pressure for the release of her cut. Evidence of Baldoni's efforts to accommodate Lively's demands, including a series of text messages with the editors who were later replaced by Lively in favor of her husband's editor, underscores the extreme lengths Baldoni went to in order to preserve the film's integrity. The Times' willful omission of these critical details not only distorts the truth, but also perpetuates a false narrative that conveniently absolves Lively of her own culpability in the unraveling of professional relationships and the upheaval surrounding the film. More messages between the Dream Team. Justin says, redacted. Blake wants to know when you could be there next week. Editor number 2, I can fly up on Sunday or Monday, up to you guys. Justin, and would you prefer to be there or edit from home? Editor 2, I don't have a preference. Editor 1, and so it begins. ... Justin says they could push for the editor to stay home. Editor is like, they both have pros and cons. I want Blake to feel like she's getting what she wants so we can move on from this need of hers. Justin says, for the record, she's been getting what she wants this entire movie. And she's getting to edit, which is what she wants. Let's remember that. LOL. And editor 2 says, I understand. Yes, and yet. And he says, and Justin says, true, space, exclamation mark. Editor number 2, I don't want to give her any opportunity to say, well, because Redacted was in LA, we could only work certain hours, so I need more time, and I didn't really get what I needed, or whatever it may be. Justin, point is, if you feel it's best and you want to go there, no problem at all. And also, if you would like to stay home, that's something that we can say. I just want you to do what is best for you. Cannot see the next message. They are showing it at Book Bonanza. Editor 2, the whole movie? Justin, yup, hers. Editor 1, wow. Justin, was supposed to be ours, and then I was uninvited. Shrug emoji. Whole thing is pretty cruel and intense. Editor 1, unfucking believable. Edit 2, ugh. Sorry, Justin. Justin, I love you both. Editor 1, red heart, red heart, red heart. Editor 2, purple heart, purple heart, purple heart. Editor 1, I just hope you love, or at least stomach, the cut that is going out into the world. Justin, I haven't seen it. Can't yet. Also missing from the article is Lively's demand for an unearned producer credit and coveted PGA mark, a demand that Wayfarer and Baldoni were forced to concede under duress, as documented internally. And then here's Jamie's email. Hi everyone, I'm writing to you all regarding a letter that I wrote on behalf of Justin and myself, addressed to the Producers Guild. As you know, we received a request to write a recommendation on behalf of Blake for her to receive the PGA mark. This was a request that we feel was unreasonable and cold-hearted. Essentially, the movie It Ends With Us has been taken unjustly from Justin as a director, and essentially from Wayfarer's control due to the extortion of Blake. Without going into all the details of the events that have transpired over the months, Justin and I ended up agreeing to write the letter due to feeling trapped. She continues to hold a threat over our heads, and every time we try to hold a line, she uses that threat either directly or indirectly to get us to fold. Make no mistake, I am not suggesting that we were literally forced to acquiesce, but given the high profile of the movie, the partnership with Sony, the amount of money invested, and the need to complete the movie, we have written the letter on her behalf, omitting the truth of how and why she was able to contribute in the ways we listed. There is nothing to do with this letter now. It only serves as a way to memorialize why the letter was sent in the first place, should we ever need to explain it. Thank you, Jamie. Thursday, June 27, 3:55 p.m. June 26, 2024. Dear members of the Producers Guild of America, we hope this letter finds you well. We are writing to inform you of the significant role and contribution that Blake Lively has played in the making of the film It Ends With Us, based on the best-selling novel by Colleen Hoover, blah, blah, blah. Optioned the property 5 years ago. We've been directly involved in every step of development, from adapting the book, bringing on our co-financer, Sony, and of course casting our lead. From the time Blake was brought on, she has had an instrumental voice in many different aspects in the making of the film. Her contributions have been impactful, as she was consulted with many of the casting options. She helped to refine the script. She redesigned her own wardrobe, as well as gave notes on others. She contributed to the production design and set decoration, and had influence on how many of the scenes were shot. Blake has been very involved in the post process as well. She has had an active role in the edit, the sound mix, and has made decisions on the music selections and score. She also continues to find creative ways to promote the film so that it can achieve its greatest success. Since contractually she began the movie with an executive producer credit, our earlier submission to the Producers Guild of America did not include her as a named producer, but we both feel her contributions have warranted the revised credit and consideration for the PGA mark. On behalf of Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni, and Jamie Heath. Moreover, the article fails to address the fact that Baldoni was systemically sidelined from the marketing of his own film. From the very beginning, Baldoni had insisted on marketing the film with a focus on domestic violence and its survivors, a message that was integral to the film's purpose. Yet, Lively drastically limited his input and deliberately steered the promotional campaign away from its societal message. Further undermining Baldoni's role, Lively initially refused to permit his attendance at the film's premiere. Only after significant pressure did she reluctantly agree to allow Baldoni and the Wayfarer team to attend, but under humiliating conditions. The Wayfarer team and their families, including Baldoni and Heath, were segregated from the main cast, barred from the exclusive after-party, and forced to organize their own event at additional cost. Baldoni's participation on the red carpet was cut short, and his family and friends were confined to a makeshift holding area in the basement before being escorted into a separate theater after Lively's departure. Not only had Lively stolen the film, but she also robbed Baldoni and his team of any genuine opportunity to celebrate their hard work. Alright, you already know this if you watched my last video about this. I don't give a shit that Blake Lively took over the movie. You know who else doesn't give a shit? SAG-AFTRA. SAG-AFTRA doesn't give a shit. They're supporting Blake. Who knows if Baldoni and Heath will get the Producers Guild on their side. I feel like Jamie's letter is very clearly just damage control because they knew for sure Blake was going to sue them later. But Justin getting locked in the basement during the premiere is, I think, I can't help it, a little bit funny. I think it's funny. I think he deserves it. And I also think that it's weird that this big feminist man was so insistent that the discomfort of multiple women in the cast who didn't want to appear with him for promotion didn't matter and that he should get to go anyway and be near them. I think it's weird that he was clearly aware ahead of the premiere that he and Blake were to be separated, and then he was still mad that he didn't get to go be at the main party. And also, Megyn Kelly, who just so happens to also be a client of Baldoni's lawyer, had the lawyer on her show as part of the press tour that motherfucker has been on to try to talk shit about Blake Lively. And they played this leaked audio message that Justin had left for his editors about how he was so heartbroken to be locked in the basement. It's a really novel idea to leak audio like that during one of these press campaigns against a woman, isn't it? We've never seen that before. Anyway, this leaked audio message is Justin bitching to his editors about how he's so sad he got locked in the basement at the premiere that he had to put a bunch of pressure to even be allowed to attend because he was behaving inappropriately on set. It seems like the most convincing thing they have to leak is just audio of Baldoni feeling sorry for himself, and there's tons more of Baldoni feeling sorry for himself throughout the complaint. But I'm losing interest in reading all of that, and I'm assuming that you are also losing interest in hearing all of it. So let's go ahead and take a quick interlude, now that I have mentioned that Baldoni's lawyer is doing a press tour about all of this. We've already discussed the lawyer's totally above board stop onto former client Megyn Kelly's show. He's also been speaking to other networks and outlets, as he promised in the lawsuit, saying that this is not the last lawsuit. He's going to sue Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds directly. As I've already said, none of those have popped up yet. And I want to talk about the best information that I am working off of right now as to why that would be. So this comment is actually the pinned comment on my most recent video on this subject, and it's from that same employment attorney who weighed in earlier regarding the right to sue letter, so thank you very, very much for this. In my opinion, if Baldoni files a defamation lawsuit against Blake, not only will it immediately be dismissed, his attorney should be sanctioned for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Keeping in mind that I am an employment attorney, not a defamation attorney, here's why I think that. Blake has not made any comments to the media about Baldoni. If you say something to the media, you can be sued for defamation. But you cannot be sued for anything you say in a court proceeding. This is called testimonial privilege. The idea is that if you lie while testifying, that's perjury, so we assume you're telling the truth, and therefore your testimony is not defamatory. Of course, people lie while testifying all the time, but we've decided as a society to let the state criminal system handle that as opposed to citizens' civil system. The testimonial privilege would cover anything Blake says in a deposition, in a discovery response, at a hearing, or at trial. With respect to her current civil rights charge of discrimination, employment discrimination laws prohibit retaliation against anyone for anything they say or do while pursuing a charge, for the most part. So if someone files a charge that is full of demonstrable lies that are defamatory, they still cannot be held liable for defamation. If they then proceed to file a lawsuit, you can try to get the court to sanction them for filing a frivolous lawsuit, but it's still not defamation because of the litigation privilege. Litigation privilege would cover anything said in court filings. Generally, court filings are drafted and signed by attorneys, not the party. As such, they are not testimony and not covered by the testimonial privilege. Despite this, you still cannot sue someone for defamation for something they say in a court filing. So if Blake does end up filing a lawsuit, Baldoni cannot sue her for defamation based on the complaint or other filings. Honestly, Baldoni's case against the New York Times strikes me as his lawyer's attempt to placate him. I'm sure he went to his attorney and demanded they sue Blake for defamation, and his attorney explained why he can't do that. And I can see Baldoni saying, then what can I do? And his attorney came up with suing the New York Times for libel. Stupid case, but maybe not stupid enough to be frivolous. Beyond just going out and saying they're planning on suing more and leaking Baldoni's little meow meow voice note to his editors, Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, is also going ahead and calling even more attention to something that I hadn't even heard about until a few days ago. So I didn't watch the new Deadpool movie. I've seen the first one when it came out. Wasn't really interested in the new one. Not sure how interested I am in it now. A little more interested now, if I'm being honest. There's this variant, I guess, of Deadpool in this new Deadpool movie named Nice Pool. And he's not in the comics. They're doing like a whole multiverse thing. So they have like the other variants from other comics, and this is a new one who's not from the comics, named Nice Pool. And Nice Pool, I guess, so 1, he gets violently murdered in front of a flower shop. 2, he wears his hair in like a little man bun like Baldoni used to. And 3, he comments on Lady Deadpool's recently postpartum body. Main Deadpool says you're not supposed to comment on a woman's body, and Nice Pool says that it is okay because Nice Pool identifies as a feminist. Between this and yelling at Justin Baldoni worse than anyone else has in his life, Ryan Reynolds is really on track to make me like him. Just winning me over little by little. So Lady Deadpool is the one who kills him in front of the flower shop, and Lady Deadpool is, of course, Blake Lively's little Easter egg role. She voice acted that part. Also, apparently, there is a deleted scene where Nice Pool references having a podcast that monetizes the women's movement, which is man enough. I do not even disagree for once with Baldoni's lawyer. I think this was probably about Baldoni, but I think it's funny. I like it. I think being pearl clutchy about it is a little bit short-sighted because most people, like me, probably wouldn't have even put it together unless somebody directly led us to it. And now Baldoni's lawyer is leading people to it. Baldoni's lawyer decided the shoe fit, and I just think that's funny. Alright, moving back to this lawsuit, and heads up, I am abridging some. I would like to finish this video tonight. There are more screenshots between Baldoni and his editing dream team. He was in the hospital. You can pause to read if you want. He mentions to these editors that they didn't get to do their director's cut, so they can still do that at some point, and he congratulates himself on how many domestic violence survivors feel seen, says that's why they did the movie. And then there are screenshots you can also pause to read now of Justin and those editors talking about how Baldoni was going to be at the premiere after all, and despite the basement thing being discussed like a surprise that was sprung on him, in these screenshots he says, "I'm gonna be there, there's just different timing and holding areas and theaters and all the things you can imagine." Here's that bluster I mentioned about how they're doing more lawsuits, even though I agree with that pinned comment from AM Fivers, who said that it doesn't seem like something that would be done because it seems really frivolous. When Wayfarer and Baldoni hired Lively to appear in the film, they did not anticipate that she would execute a hostile takeover of the entire project. Lively's cynical abuse of sexual harassment allegations to assert unilateral control over every aspect of the production was both strategic and manipulative. Simultaneously, her public image suffered as a result of a series of high-profile blunders, which she tried to deflect by blaming plaintiffs for the public's prying interest into the foibles of an A-list celebrity. This is nothing but an excuse. Fame is a double-edged sword, but Lively's tactics here are unconscionable. Alongside the Times, she orchestrated a malicious attack on the reputations, careers, and personal life of plaintiffs, subjecting them to public humiliation, threats, and vitriol. This lawsuit seeks to hold the Times accountable for its role in this defamation campaign, but plaintiffs are not done. There are other bad actors involved, and make no mistake, this will not be the last lawsuit. Alright, there's 80 pages left at this point in my PowerPoint presentation, and it's just too much. We go into facts common to the causes of action next. First one here is that Baldoni reached out about the rights to It Ends With Us through his literary agent in or about 2019. Some stuff about him being some amazing and impactful filmmaker who wanted to cause societal change with his movie, etc., etc. Then Wayfarer got the adaptation rights in 2019. Baldoni was attached to direct and star, and then Wayfarer partnered with Sony to co-finance and distribute the film, and the agreement included a whole generous whopping 1% of proceeds that would go to some unnamed organization that would donate to survivors of domestic violence. In this page it says it was as early as September 2022 that they decided it would be no more who would get that 1%. Then Blake signed on in December 2022. She was signed on as an executive producer, which they say is expected for a star of her stature, and that she was not expected to do anything else to earn that credit. So it is the full-on PGA producer mark that she got after her creative battle, but she was always going to be an executive producer. I'm just not really sure how much executive producing actually means anything other than like contributed money and star power to the film, right? And then we move into something that feels reverse engineered from what the internet was mad about, accusing Blake Lively of taking over wardrobe. It says, on or about May 15th, 2023, principal photography of the film commenced in New Jersey. During pre-production, Lively began to assert control over aspects of the film beyond her role as an actor and outside the scope of her contractual entitlements. While lead actors are sometimes granted approval over the general look of their on-screen character, this authority typically does not include full control over wardrobe decisions without input from the director and producers. Nevertheless, Lively overstepped these boundaries, sidelining the production's costume designer. But there's a footnote. Lively went so far as to purchase items for her wardrobe, albeit at her own expense. So what's the problem? Without the approval of the director or producers. Lively overstepped these boundaries, sidelining the production's costume designer, a seasoned professional with a long-standing working relationship with Lively. Ignoring the director's vision for her character and disregarding the weeks spent by the entire team shopping and thoughtfully crafting her wardrobe in preparation for filming, Lively would send hundreds of images to the film's costume designer during all hours of the evening, pointing them in the direction of the appearance she wanted for her character. The costume designer then had to reshop her wardrobe, far exceeding the allocated budget and diverting time and resources. At one point, Lively insisted that her character had money and could afford $5,000 shoes, which had Baldoni rethinking the entire script that had been being worked on for well over a year and had been approved by both sides. And yeah, no, I live in Massachusetts, and Blake is right. Blake is correct. If her character is just like randomly opening a flower shop in that part of Boston, she's got money. I also just struggle to see what the big issue with much of this is, since Blake was wearing or buying her own clothes for a lot of it sounds like. We're hearing these complaints from Justin, not from the costume designer who Lively had already had a working relationship with. It also says, pause to read if you want, just for brevity, in the same point that it's trying to make against Blake, that the studio was a mere 15 minutes from her penthouse, it also says that it is unreasonable that she had wardrobe come to her rather than her going those 15 minutes. And I do have a couple of points in response to this, and one of which being she had like a 4-month-old baby, I think. So maybe she just didn't want to haul the baby on set, especially where she and the baby had caught COVID and strep. Oh, that's another thing. Nice pool. Deadpool says about Nice Pool, where's your mask? Which I'd like maybe tin hatting, but I thought so. Anyway, another point I have here being, even if it wasn't that she just didn't want to be away from her baby or bring the baby onto set, if she was wearing most of her own clothes, I bet a lot of her wardrobe for Lily was at her house and more of it there than on set. So it makes sense for fittings and discussions and stuff that they would go to her. And again, it is not the costume department who seems to be complaining about this. So Baldoni's team says quite a few times in this that he was manipulated into just letting her do whatever she wanted and take over the movie or whatever. I do want to read this part in full just because it's a little bit hilarious to me. Do you remember how Lively says in her complaint that Baldoni kept her in her trailer for hours and cried about people online saying her character looked frumpy? Here's how Baldoni would like that characterized. On the first day of principal photography, paparazzi captured and published photos of Lively in character wearing her self-selected wardrobe. These images were described as unflattering and sparked a backlash from the film's distributor, Sony. Baldoni received direct criticism from Sony, who voiced concerns about the impact of the photos on the film's public perception. Following these events, Baldoni approached Lively in her trailer to discuss necessary wardrobe adjustments. The conversation, while professional, took considerable time and was later grossly misrepresented in Lively's CRD complaint, falsely characterizing the exchange as a lengthy outburst that delayed filming and caused the crew to wait for hours while Baldoni cried in Lively's dressing room. This account, later published by The Times, is false. Although Baldoni did briefly tear up during the conversation, it was in response to what he believed was a genuine compliment from Lively, praising his work as a director and actor. In hindsight, Baldoni recognized this as a manipulation tactic, likely intended to persuade him to continue allowing her unchecked control over the wardrobe decisions. Lively later leveraged this conversation in support of her allegations of harassment, alleging that Baldoni made inappropriate comments on her appearance. In reality, Baldoni was relaying the distributor's concerns and the widespread social media criticism regarding the wardrobe's failure to meet audience expectations, a sentiment Baldoni shared. This incident marked the beginning of a troubling pattern of manipulative behavior by Lively. Isn't that kind of funny? Yes, he did cry, but it was only one masculine, grateful tear that rolled down his cheek after she complimented him. But also, she was only complimenting him to victimize him because he is a victim. Alright, again, we are chasing things that the internet got mad about. Baldoni didn't even notice some of the lines he said in that rooftop screen weren't from the screenplay, but he has decided to be angry once the rest of the internet decided to be angry after Blake said those lines came from Ryan Reynolds. They even have to include in their complaint where the scriptwriter said that she didn't mind and thought it was wonderful if those lines came from Ryan, but they're still mad about it because they know the internet is. It says Lively made other changes to the script too. I still don't care. But here's some more about Ryan Reynolds yelling at Justin Baldoni. Just weeks prior, Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, had aggressively berated Baldoni during a meeting at their penthouse in New York, accusing him of fat-shaming Lively. Baldoni, in an effort to avoid further confrontation with Lively and Reynolds and rebuild rapport with his co-star, continued to bend to her will. Reynolds and Lively's inappropriate and humiliating berating of Baldoni, delivered perhaps intentionally as other celebrity friends were coming in and out of their penthouse, was prompted by Baldoni's reasonable inquiry into crucial information needed to ensure safety and avoid injury in a scene. Baldoni, while training for a physically demanding scene in which his character Ryle would lift Lily, asked his trainer, who was introduced to him by Lively and oversaw his training for the film, how much Lively weighed. Baldoni, who suffers from back issues and has multiple bulging discs, made the inquiry to ensure he could safely perform the lift without injury. Unfortunately, the trainer relayed this information to Lively, who then informed Reynolds. The confrontation that followed was so aggressive that Baldoni felt compelled to offer repeated apologies, despite his question being entirely reasonable and made in good faith. Following this incident, Lively refused to perform the lift scene, even though it had already been rehearsed with a stunt double. In fact, Lively threatened to quit the production altogether despite her contractual obligations. Lively gave Baldoni an ultimatum to either cast someone else or work with her in the way she works. It was her way or the highway. Recasting would be detrimental to production, sever Wayfarer's relationship with Sony, and cost millions. To highlight the effects of masterful gaslighting, Baldoni and Wayfarer also truly believed that in an effort to save herself from the backlash of being recast, Lively could leak that she felt fat-shamed by Baldoni, which he thought would ruin his career. Notably, it appears he was not wrong, and despite his efforts to do everything her way, she still tried, continues to try, and arguably did, with the help of the Times, ruin his career, reputation, and well-being. I didn't see a lift in the version of the movie that I watched. Blake's complaint says no such scene existed. Even if it did, though, I don't understand why Justin couldn't have had a stunt double or lifted a bag of flour and cut the camera away or something. There's no reason to ask for a specific number unless he was fat shaming her. There was no reason. Pause to read here too. If you want another instance of them accusing her of gaslighting, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad and frustrating. The next argument is that the protection letter intentionally misrepresents conversations they had. I'm going to just read through the next few pages here rather than summarize. It does retread some of the same things I've already argued, but you know where I stand on that. Lively sets the stage for coercion by drafting a protection letter that intentionally misrepresents the nature of the conversations had between Baldoni and/or Heath and Lively, demands Wayfarer parties sign for Lively to return to work after the industry strikes. Principal photography began on May 15, 2024. From mid-June to early November 2023, production was suspended due to the Industry Guild strikes. When the strikes ended on November 9, 2023, production was eager to resume filming and make up for lost time. That same day, however, Wayfarer received an unsettling and unexpected email from Lively through her counsel containing a 17-point list of non-negotiable conditions that must be met before Lively would return to work. Though Wayfarer disagreed as to the basis for requesting these conditions, which insinuated those demands were the result of inappropriate behavior by Baldoni and Heath, the terms were agreeable and some were already in place. For example, Lively demanded that an intimacy coordinator be present at all times when Lively was on set. In fact, an intimacy coordinator had already been engaged during the first half of production, so Wayfarer took no issue with this request. Contrary to Lively's assertion, it was she who refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator to plan out scenes, putting Baldoni in the awkward position of meeting with the intimacy coordinator alone and later relaying sex scene suggestions to Lively in the intimacy coordinator's absence, not only defeating the purpose, but resulting in accusations by the time that, before shooting began, Baldoni wanted to add sex scenes that Lively considered gratuitous. In fact, those scenes were proposed by the intimacy coordinator. This is well documented in handwritten notes Baldoni took during meetings with the intimacy coordinator. Baldoni's dated handwritten notes from his meetings with the intimacy coordinator, which again Lively declined attending, were read to Lively at her penthouse, where she insisted she and Baldoni meet to write sex scenes together. As it was, the sex scenes were not written, and it was always Baldoni's intention for them to be written with input from both the intimacy coordinator and Lively. The female gaze that Lively distorts in her CRD complaint, which the Times then publishes. In response to a proposal from the intimacy coordinator that Ryle not orgasm after he satisfied Lily, Lively remarked, "I'd be mortified if that happened to me," to which Baldoni, following Lively's lead in what seemed like an attempt to connect and develop their characters, remarked that those have been some of the most beautiful moments with my wife and I. Lively again distorts this in both the protections for return to production she made Wayfarer, Heath, and Baldoni sign, and in the CRD complaint, which the Times publishes as fact without any investigation whatsoever. First, this suggestion did not originate with Baldoni, and Lively knew this. Second, it was Lively who first personalized the scenes. And third, perhaps most importantly, they were writing scenes for their characters. Lively claims that Baldoni made her feel unsafe when he used the word sexy while discussing a wardrobe adjustment, when in fact Lively herself had previously indicated both verbally and in a text message shown below that she wanted her character's wardrobe to be sexier. For a scene in which all the characters wore onesies, Lively opted to wear a large coat over hers, obscuring the outfit. Baldoni, as the film's director, suggested she remove the coat, explaining that the look would be sexier without it. Lively took offense to the comment and appeared upset, interpreting it negative rather than as creative direction. Feeling he had upset her, Baldoni apologized, despite having made a professional suggestion as a director. Notably, in separate text exchanges, Lively herself used the word sexy to describe one of her character's outfits while advocating for her own wardrobe choice, an inconsistency that undermines the basis of her complaint. Lively established what language is acceptable to her and what is not at the very outset of the relationship, just 2 days into filming. To use this language herself, then in turn make a note of each instance when her director used the same language also to describe wardrobe and character, is at best a double standard. To generate a list of demands that insinuate he and his business partner acted inappropriately and refused to work unless they agree not to do it again is calculating and even extortionistic. but then to use Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Heath's agreement not to do something they already did not do, were not doing, and had no intention of doing as the basis to file a non-public CRD complaint against them and release it to the public herself in order to ruin their reputations is defamation. The Times was directly complicit in this. Lively also established very early that it was acceptable to be present while Lively was breastfeeding. Both Heath and Baldoni have children and are comfortable around breastfeeding mothers, and Lively seemed equally comfortable. In fact, Baldoni's wife co-founded a company that makes a breastfeeding garment. I don't care, I'm not reading the rest of this. And then they mention Lively inviting Baldoni in to rehearse lines while she was pumping. Lively now alleges in the CRD complaint that Baldoni and or Heath would enter her makeup trailer of their own volition while she was breastfeeding. Notably, breastfeeding was an activity she often conducted openly in the presence of Baldoni and Heath, including during production meetings. In the CRD complaint, published in part by The Times, Lively suggests Heath walked in her trailer unannounced while in a state of undress and topless, which is false. Heath was invited into her trailer along with a female producer, Baldoni, and a Sony representative for a meeting requested by Lively. Mr. Heath arrived first to see if Lively was ready for the meeting, and after knocking and being invited in, saw that Lively was breastfeeding. She was not topless. She was having makeup removed from her collarbone while fully covered. Heath asked if they should return at a later time. Lively said no, they could move forward with the meeting as initially planned and would meet them after she finished removing makeup. Roughly 2 weeks later, Lively announced that she had thought she had seen Heath make eye contact with her. Heath immediately apologized and said he hadn't even realized he looked her way, in response to which Lively remarked, "I know you weren't trying to cop a look." A reference to this incident conveniently showed up on a document months later, distorted like the others and out of context, in a list that The Times later published as fact. By the time Wayfarer received the protections for return to production document, Wayfarer had invested millions of dollars, completed half the film with Lively as the lead, and incurred substantial costs in preparation to resume production immediately following the strikes. However, instead of returning to work as anticipated, they received Lively's list of demands. In the spirit of ensuring Lively felt comfortable on set, Wayfarer promptly agreed to her terms, despite disagreeing with the insinuations underlying them. Neither Wayfarer, Heath, nor Baldoni had engaged in any of the behavior alluded to in the return to production document, nor did they plan to. They thought that was the end of it, and they were ready to move ahead and make a great film. It was agreed that filming would resume on January 5th, 2024. On the evening of January 4th, 2024, Baldoni, Heath, and producers Todd Black and Alex Sachs, a representative of Sony and the film's first AD, were invited to Lively and Reynolds' penthouse in New York City. They arrived eager to discuss plans for the next day's filming, prepared with their production materials. Instead, they were blindsided by Lively and Reynolds, who presented a list of grievances that were both unanticipated and troubling. Reynolds launched into a tirade, berating Baldoni in what Baldoni later described as a traumatic encounter, stating he had never been spoken to like that in his life. Reynolds demanded an apology to Lively for actions that were mischaracterized and demonstrably false. See below. When Baldoni resisted apologizing for what he had not done, Reynolds became further enraged. Everyone, including the producer Lively had asked production to engage and a representative of Sony that was in attendance, left that meeting in shock. The producer offered that in his 40-year career, he had never seen anyone speak to someone like that in a meeting. The Sony representative mentioned that she would often think of that meeting, and her one regret is that she didn't stop Reynolds' berating of Baldoni. On the very first page of her CRD complaint, Lively inaccurately claims that a list of 30 items was agreed upon this meeting. This assertion is categorically false. The 30-point list is strategically positioned to appear as if it were a standalone written document. However, no such document was ever presented to Baldoni, the Wayfarer team, or to their knowledge anyone else, whether during that meeting or any other time, and therefore could not have been agreed to. They didn't show it to us with signatures. We knew that they only signed the other one. They think they're doing something here, and they're not. In reality, many of these items were encountered for the first time in the CRD complaint itself and include references to highly disturbing events that never occurred. The repeated use of the phrase "no more" before each demand falsely suggests that these alleged incidents had previously taken place and needed to cease. This implication is not only misleading, but entirely untrue. Baldoni and Heath left the meeting deeply unsettled by the implications of Lively and Reynolds' behavior and the power dynamics at play. Faced with mounting pressure and weighing the financial implications of what shutting down a film halfway through production would mean, Wayfarer made the difficult decision to resume production and finish the film despite fears that Lively was intentionally manipulating facts for her own gain. Stakes were extraordinarily high. Financiers had invested substantial resources, hundreds of cast and crew members had endured months without work due to the strikes, and nearly 5 years of development had gone into bringing this film to life. Filming resumed without further grievances or references to prior disputes from Lively, a fact that Lively concedes in her CRD complaint. However, the lasting effects of Lively's allegations left Baldoni uneasy. He and Wayfarer continued to make considerable concessions throughout production, all in the interest of successfully delivering an outstanding film. Okay, hey, You know what, Justin? I'm feeling a little uneasy too. So uneasy, I think I need to spend just a couple seconds here saying, holy shit, so I'm glad the whole frog in a slowly boiling pot thing isn't true, because dead frogs are sad to think about. But I do wish that there was another really great metaphor like that to explain how all these little interactions pile up over the course of being sexually harassed at a workplace, and how something you were willing to laugh along with and attempt to go along with a few months prior becomes suddenly impossible to ignore when taken as a larger pattern, and especially when you're like facing having to go back to a workplace you've been able to be away from for a long time because of the strikes. So the next point is what most of this shit hinges on. This idea that Lively stole the movie from Justin. It says Blake denied Baldoni his essential experience of getting 10 weeks of protected time to edit. They also try to snipe at Lively for being a Nepo baby and for requesting to spend time in the editing bay with Justin despite her previous discomfort with him. Though, I mean, as she said, he stopped sexually harassing her after they had the meeting and he got yelled at by her husband. So I don't even think that this is that weird. If it's between spending time in close quarters with the guy who sexually harassed you to try to make sure that you don't hate the movie that he makes out of stuff he filmed while he was sexually harassing you, or having no say over what comes out, I can see why she made that math. I don't care. I don't think it makes her less believable. It says Blake eventually expressed disappointment with just collaboration and said that she too deserved to see her creative vision realized. It goes over Blake bringing on the new editor and replacing the old ones, as well as the old composer, and it says Sony later informed Wayfarer that Lively would not promote the film unless her demands were met. Then it says that Baldoni continued with his director's cut, more bitching about Blake having a showing for a version he hadn't seen yet. I already read those texts out loud. You can pause to read these other ones. We are skating through. They say Baldoni's cut scored higher with audiences, but Lively said she and the author wouldn't promote the movie if it wasn't Blake's version. I really do wonder if the Baldoni cut is going to come out at some point. God, I fucking hope not. Then we go over Blake Lively seeking the higher producer credit and how they feel like she strong-armed them into this, claiming neither Wayfarer or Baldoni felt like she deserved the mark, but like, they still wrote that letter. And when they tried not to write the letter, they said that Blake Lively informed them through Sony that any goodwill left between them was done. I don't blame her. I'm surprised there was any left. It really seems like she had tried to work with them. And if she really did as much as they're whining about, it seems like she did in fact deserve that producer mark. Then more complaining about Baldoni being, as they call it, exiled from his own film. I'll read this part too, because it features that part I was so angry about at the end of my last video, where Baldoni claims to have given Colleen Hoover the opportunity. Consistent with her pattern of vindictiveness, as the premiere of the film approached, Lively instructed Sony that she and the cast would not participate in any marketing or promotion of the film alongside Baldoni. She made certain that Baldoni was removed from all artwork for the film, posters included, and stripped him of his A Film By credit. Furthermore, Lively and Reynolds unfollowed him on social media, as did the author of the book, someone with whom Baldoni had maintained a 5-year personal relationship, and for whom Baldoni created this opportunity, and other cast members, creating the false impression that Baldoni had done something wrong. It became clear that Lively was working diligently to contrive a narrative that would explain why she took over the film and exiled Baldoni. Baldoni had no intention of ever making this information public, ever. He promoted the film as originally intended, gave Lively full credit and praise, and wanted the film to succeed. He wanted to move on. Lively, however, refused to let it go. Also, I didn't even notice he's not in the posters, because it made sense for him to not be in the posters, because it's a movie about domestic violence where he was playing the domestic abuser. If they were being all coupley in the posters, I would think that the whole "I thought this was a romance movie" complaints people were making was more justified than if it's the poster it did that is just Blake. Alright, strapping our skates back on here. I'm almost done. Then here's the claim that Reynolds tried to get the agent to drop Baldoni at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, claiming that he was totally in the dark about the marketing plan that Sony distributed after he had been sidelined when the rest of the cast agreed they didn't want to promote the film with him, which, much like the intimacy coordinator thing, kind of feels like it means Justin Baldoni was doing a shitty job of paying attention to how the movie was coming together if he didn't know how Sony wanted it marketed. The majority of the cast apparently promised to boycott with Blake if Justin was at the premiere, and then Justin insisted on going anyway. They call this, from the rest of the cast and Blake, bullying. He calls the basement sequestering during the premiere humiliating. You can pause to read. I'd really like to get to the end of this man's self-pity soon, so I don't feel like reading this out loud. He was also excluded from the after party, which feels like it was implied if he was going to be the reason everybody else boycotted the premiere, but they had to list this like it was a separate offense. Pause to read if you want more details on him being humiliated by being in the basement, or just go read the complaint yourself. As always, it's linked in the description below. I do find it interesting that they specifically point out that the Wayfarer after party was dry to reflect the values Wayfarer stands for. I just wonder what other kind of stuff they think they were reflecting the values of their company through the movie, maybe? How worth protecting that was to, like, maybe that rich backer and co-defendant, Steve Sarowitz. So it tries to paint Baldoni suddenly dropping the marketing he had been going along with as a return to his original marketing plan. But then why had he been on board to do pop-up flower shop tours and told no one else wanted to appear with him? Because it's bullshit. That's why. Because this whole complaint is bullshit. Are you seeing yet why I didn't read the whole thing in the last video? Now we move into it saying that Baldoni was actually forced to hire PR to combat Lively's negative press push and claims that what his team did was run standard industry practice and that they had to in order to combat a story that was going to run about Baldoni's Baha'i faith, one he shares with that backer Steve Sarowitz, as far as I'm aware, and that is pretty much as far as I'm aware anything about the religion. They say Lively's publicist Leslie Sloan was the one who planted that story, and also stories about Baldoni being a predator, and then we once again, with a list of hyperlinks to articles written by women, blame Blake Lively for her own bad press and harassment. And that's kind of the point of all of this, is to blame Blake Lively for her own harassment. There are even more text messages that they think showing additional messages before and after somehow exonerates them for, even though almost nothing is nearly as damning as the missing "this one was also not me." There are big red circles and arrows around a bunch of these messages. I'll go over the rest of the text messages soon. I want to go over the ones in the Steph Jones complaint as well, so I'm just going to do them all together. But for right now, I'm done reading this, because other than the fact that the complaint shows more texts from the group chats, many of which have things that scan to me as sarcasm, if not just implicit admission that they were doing other things and planting other articles, it mostly just moves on from there to try to claim that the New York Times did libel using confidential information that Stephanie Jones disclosed. And they also source an article that Steph Jones sourced in her defamation complaint about how bad she is, because she was saying Melissa and Jen got that published about her, and they're saying, read this because this is about how bad she is. That's just kind of an Ouroboros, and I really want my weekend to be available for me to read the library books I'm planning on going and picking up tomorrow, so we're saving all of that for a future video. No, I want to stop on the victim blaming here, not just because I want to remind you why they're doing this. And they're doing this because it is so much easier to convince somebody that they were never wrong than it is to convince somebody that they were fooled and that they should maybe re-examine some things. I also wanted to end there because I think it's a pretty great transition into the last thing that I wanted to talk about today, which is the one single statement that Blake Lively's team has put out in response to Brian Friedman's entire media tour. Because I think the statement is actually pretty wise and aware. And I'm relieved to see that her team is so aware of what's going on here, even if I'm not assured that the general public is. So here's that statement. On Monday, January 6th, Lively's legal team told People in a statement that her serious claims of sexual harassment and retaliation are backed by concrete facts. This is not a feud arising from creative differences or a he said, she said situation, her lawyer's statement read. As alleged in Ms. Lively's complaint, and as we will prove in litigation, Wayfarer Studios and its associates engaged in unlawful retaliatory astroturfing against Ms. Lively for simply trying to protect herself and others on a film set, and their response to the lawsuit has been to launch more attacks against Ms. Lively since her filing. The statement continued, sexual harassment and retaliation are illegal in every workplace and in every industry. A classic tactic to distract from allegations of this type of misconduct is to blame the victim by suggesting that they invited the conduct, brought it on themselves, misunderstood the intentions, or even lied, the team wrote. Another classic tactic is to reverse the victim and offender and suggest that the offender is actually the victim. These concepts normalize and trivialize allegations of serious misconduct. Most importantly, media statements are not a defense to Ms. Lively's legal claims, Lively's legal team wrote. We will continue to prosecute her claims in federal court where the rule of law determines who prevails, not hyperbole and threats. I love that they called this out for what it is, which is very heavily inspired by Darvo, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. I love that they pointed out that this isn't a he said, she said about creative disputes, that they brought it back once more, as it should be, to being a workplace sexual harassment issue and an issue of retaliation for reporting that workplace sexual harassment. I think this statement is great, and I think Baldoni's lawsuit is bullshit. And for today, that's about all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to everybody who has been keeping up with this with me, who's been tagging me in information about this on Blue Sky. interacting with my threads, ranting about this shit over on Blue Sky. Thanks to everybody who confirmed that iPhones let you unsend a message and says that you did like that in iOS. Huge thank you to my friend Mark for helping me so much with the research and ideation for this. I've truly lost track of which points in this video belonged to each of us at this point, because we've been talking about this like since Baldoni dropped his complaints. And also, wow, thank you so much for 11,000 subscribers. That happened so quickly after 10,000. Thank you. I'm gonna be continuing to work on my Lacy Green deep dive, though I'm diving too deep to no return, so it might take me a little bit longer to get there. I might have another video up here before that, but I do have the first hour of the main channel video up on Patreon now for Patreon subscribers, which reminds me, thank you so much to my lovely Patreon subscribers, a few of whose names you can see on the screen right now. Patreon's a great way to help support me financially. I also have a Ko-fi for one-time tips and donations if you're interested in something that's not a recurring thing. Thank you so much to everybody who has supported me financially through the Ko-fi, through the Patreon, by sending me money directly. It's a huge help. Thank you so much. Thank you so much also to everybody who has supported my channel in non-monetary fashions, like by liking my videos, subscribing to my channel, 11,000 of you, that's amazing, talking about my videos in kind ways, promoting me. Taylor Lorenz found my YouTube channel, and I'm pretty sure she found my YouTube channel because somebody suggested it to her. I don't think the algorithm is quite that good to me. Taylor shared my YouTube channel on her Blue Sky, and that was amazing. That's, I think, a lot of why I made it to 11,000 so quickly. That was so cool and so validating, and thank you so much. Thank you so much to everybody who has encouraged me to continue talking about this, who has said that my perspective on this is useful or helpful. To everyone who understands that this is not a place where I come to tell an unbiased story where I pretend like we don't get to pick sides in a story of abuse or harassment, but that this is a place where we can talk about this sort of thing, where we don't hate women or blame victims. I love you. I love making videos. I'll be back soon. Bye.